We are in the month of June, which means we are officially in the Atlantic hurricane season. The season runs from June 1 to November 30 each year. This year's outlook is for a near normal season, but don't quite celebrate. The prediction, 12 to 17 named storms and 5 to 9 hurricanes, 1 out of 4 of them being major hurricanes. Start your preparations early because hurricanes can strike at any time. June also marks the official start of summer, and boy, the heat is on. Make sure to keep hydrated and limit your exposure to the sun. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson, and you're inside the Sunday edition of Jamaica Magazine. We have so much lined up just for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Whenever you hear the following tone, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, will be giving information on an emergency situation affecting the island. Please be on the alert and listen to your radio and television for further information. This was a test of the emergency alert system, brought to you by ODPEM.
With the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, the National Hurricane Center will use an array of instruments to predict, confirm, and advise about the developments within the Atlantic basin. Watch now as we head into the eye of the storm and see how hurricane hunters gather the data to keep us informed.
The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1 through to November 30. These dates historically describe the period when most tropical cyclones form in the Atlantic basin. A number of tools are used, like satellites, radars, and computer models, to determine where a hurricane will go and how intense it will be. But a critical part of forecasting is done by the specially equipped NOAA aircrafts called Hurricane Hunters, which collect data through high-flying meteorological stations.
That will be transmitted back to the Hurricane Center and then made available to all the region, including Jamaica.
WC-130J Hercules is a high-wing, medium-range aircraft used in weather reconnaissance missions. This plane is configured to penetrate tropical disturbances and storms, as well as hurricanes and winter storms, and get data on the movement, size, and intensity of these systems. The NOAA Gulfstream model, nicknamed Gonzo, is a high-tech, high-flying, and high-speed twin-engine jet that flies around and over developing tropical cyclones to create a detailed picture of the surrounding upper atmosphere. It has a range of nearly 4,000 nautical miles and a cruising altitude of 45,000 feet. The Lockheed model, nicknamed Kermit, is in a class by itself. Formulated with unique scientific instrumentation, radars, and recording systems, the Kermit is able to do horizontal and vertical scans of storms.
So we'll have two meteorologists sit up front there. The person in the left seat is usually verifying the drops-on data that we're collecting. The person on the right is helping with navigation. The station behind that is where our radar operator sits. So we've got a radar in the nose and a radar in the tail collecting data for us. This is where all of our data systems reside. And then back here is where we're actually dropping the sondes. So we'll prepare one of the sondes here, pass it over to that guy. He'll prepare it there just so we have a backup just in case this computer goes dead or that computer goes dead. Once the sonde is ready to go, close the door.
Cutting through the eye wall of a hurricane, lashed by extreme winds, dazzling rain, and fierce updrafts and downdrafts before entering the calm of the storm, probing every wind and pressure change during the course of 8 to 10 hours. So why aren't these aircrafts torn apart during these flights? Well, they are generally not destroyed by strong winds while in flight. It's the sheer or sudden change in horizontal or vertical winds that can destroy an aircraft or cause its loss of control. That's why NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft don't fly through tornadoes, but they are always monitoring for hotspots of severe weather and shear that they can often identify on radar and avoid if it's too severe.
We are always in direct communication with the National Hurricane Center. As soon as they get the information, we speak to them, they tell us what is happening, and so when we are ready to issue a warning, if we feel that we are threatened, we communicate that to the Hurricane Center. We are ready to issue a warning, what do you think? And we take that decision and they make it public to all the countries, not only in the region, but even wider than that through the internet and other means.
On Get the Facts this week, we talk pension and retirement planning, the importance of being in a pension scheme, and avoiding old age poverty.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. There are so many parables that I could use to introduce today's topic, and trouble no set like rain is one of them. Interpretation: we don't usually get a glimpse of some of the troubles or hard times that we encounter to make different choices. However, one thing we do have a glimpse of is the reality that there will come a day when we reach retirement age and will not be able to work again. This is where having a pension is necessary, and it is also a process that must start before we reach this stage. To take this conversation further is attorney at law and president of the Pensions Industry Association of Jamaica, PIAJ, Sonia Goff. Welcome to the program, Mrs. Goff.
Thank you for having me, Theo.
All right, let's jump right into getting the facts. This might seem like an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why is pension planning important?
Well, simply, it ensures that you put in place safeguards to have a dignified life in retirement.
Right.
The reality is that people are living 2 to 3 decades after they stop formal work. So imagine you retire from your formal work at 60 or 65. You could be alive until you're 90. And if you don't have, adequate provision for your retirement years, you could find yourself in a dire position.
Right.
And the reality is that old age poverty is not something that is, that we're immune from if you don't make take adequate steps.
Okay. So what's the right age to start planning for a pension? And I'm asking this not about just how early, but also when it's too late.
I would say it's never too late. So the right time is when you first start to work.
Right.
When you get that first paycheck, you really should start saving for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an entrepreneur, if you've never really worked for someone, you should start from the minute you start earning money. You should be putting aside some money for retirement. It's never too late, though many of the formal pension saving arrangements don't allow you to join those arrangements after a particular time, sometimes after 60, after 64. So that's around the time when it will get a little difficult to put aside something that's meaningful at that age. So really, the message should always be to start as early as possible.
Soon as you can. All right. Now, I understand that a lot of people have the idea that 5% is the pension rate, but I hear it's variable.
Right. So we have different types of pension plans in Jamaica. So you have what's called a defined benefit plan, which tends to be many of the older pension plans you find. These are the employer-sponsored plans.
Right.
And what that means is a defined benefit plan means that your employer promises you a pension based on a defined formula, a defined benefit.
Okay.
So you could presumably work out at every stage of working what your defined benefit would be if you were to retire today or retire tomorrow. And in those cases, the contribution rate is often set by the trust deed and rules, the constitutive documents of your employer's plan. And oftentimes it's an expected rate of 5%.
Okay.
And then your employer would contribute whatever additional is necessary to meet that defined promise. That
So the
defined
5%
benefit.
or whatever percent is me.
Right. So that 5% is you.
Right.
You can contribute more,
Right.
up to 10%.
I noticed you underlined that.
Right. And then your employer, of course, as I said, contributes what's required to make that defined benefit promise to you. Then you have defined contribution plans, and those are a lot more common. And in a defined contribution plan, your benefit is a function, when you reach retirement, is a function of what your employer puts in, what you put in, and how well that money is invested. What the law says, the Income Tax Act, it says your employer can contribute up to 10%.
Right.
You can contribute up to 10%.
Maximum 20.
But where your employer contributes less than 10, you can contribute the difference. So let us say your employer is contributing 3%. In total, you could contribute at 17 to get to a maximum of 20. Now, if you have, so that's a defined benefit, defined contribution, and then of course you have approved retirement schemes, which are by their nature defined contribution plans that are set up for persons who don't work in a formal, with a formal employee-employer relationship,
Right.
or where the employer doesn't have a pension plan. They can contribute to these retirement schemes, and those schemes are defined contribution schemes, and you can contribute up to 20% to those schemes as well.
That was going to be my next question, because you brought up entrepreneurs. It's easy to run my business, make some money, pension, think about that the next day. But you're mentioning that there are schemes that you can go in and...
Correct. So the retirement schemes, approved retirement schemes, were really set up for that, to address that element of the working population. So not everybody's going to be in a formal workplace, and not everybody is going to be with an employer who has a pension plan, because employers are not required by law to set up pension plans. And so if you find that your employer doesn't have a pension plan, or you're not eligible to join the plan, because there are some plans that are set up for, let's say, admin workers, but not factory workers, certain executives don't have pension plans, but the other staff members may have a pension plan. So you may find that your employer has a pension plan, but you're not eligible, or the employer doesn't have a pension plan, or you're just not working with an employer at all. So in any of those circumstances, the retirement schemes that are being offered in the market are options for you. So there's never a situation where someone who is working cannot put aside for a pension. And it's different from your general ordinary savings. And I think that's important for people to understand.
Please,
a lot of people say, oh, I don't need to save for a pension because I can do it myself, right? But the biggest benefit in saving in a pension or a kind of retirement arrangement is that you get the income tax benefit, i.e. you're able to save before your income is taxed. You save on your gross earnings, not your net. So persons who say, I'm going to just, save with any of the, investment houses out there, that's fine, but you're always doing that after your income is taxed on your net earnings.
So that 17% you mentioned takes on a whole different hue now.
Exactly. And then the compounding of those investment returns, all of those accretions, those are not taxed either. So you find that you have this compounding effect, which of course increases your pension, pension account, so to speak. Now I want to be clear, it's not that your income will never be taxed. It's really a tax-deferred system. And so in that case, there's a tax advantage in that your income isn't taxed now. The returns on your investments aren't taxed. But when you hit retirement, and we have what's called a decumulation event, meaning you're pulling down the pension now, at that point, tax would usually be applied. There are usually some exceptions, but typically you would find that you'd pay tax at that point.
This is Get the Facts. You're giving us quite a bit. I'm going to ask you some more. The pension... You retire at 65. You've saved all this time. You live until 90, 100. Are there any challenges in that? Can you live beyond your pension?
Yes, and that's one of the biggest risks, what we call longevity risk, where you outlive your pension.
Oh,
well,
man.
I don't know if I would ever say that you've lived too long, but longer than you planned for. And in a case like that, because nobody quite knows, right? And what happens is that there's really no kind of fix for that, except that oftentimes your investment managers can do projections for you and give you an idea of really how long you should be saving, how long out into retirement you should be saving, and also how much you should be saving. The general test is what we call the replacement ratio, which is 80%. Try and save such that every year you are really having 80% in savings of what you would have been working during your working life. So 80% of your last average, earnings, salary, is what you should be receiving in retirement.
Okay.
Now, some people, their retirement years are a lot smoother than others, of course.
Yeah.
And so these life events, sometimes you may get an unexpected, unfortunate health diagnosis. You may find that you were counting on yourself and your spouse's income combined into retirement, but your spouse, may predecease you and you're not, or your partner.
Natural disaster.
And natural disaster, you thought, because our homes tend to be our biggest retirement assets.
Right.
Well, Jamaicans feel very strongly about owning their own homes, and oftentimes that's a big part of your retirement security. But as you said, a natural disaster, that could wipe that out. And we need to be careful as well. Your retirement savings should never be seen as a substitute for insurance. So you're expected, of course, to do all the other things and take the precautions like life insurance, health insurance, property insurance, and manage those risks so that you don't find that your retirement pot, your retirement savings, has to take care of those other things because you didn't put those safeguards in place.
This is a portion of your plan.
It's
not the whole plan.
I love that. It's not the whole plan. It's a central part of the plan, but it shouldn't be seen as the whole plan.
We're going to get some more of the facts. This conversation is wonderful, but we're going to take a break right now. Please don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Get the Facts. We are continuing our conversation on the importance of pension contribution and retirement planning. Our guest is attorney at law and president of the Pensions Industry Association of Jamaica, PIAJ, Sonia Goff. Lady Goff, let's pick up right where we ended. Now, you were talking about contributions. We had went over percentages. We had even looked at mitigating challenges in the future. Now, there's something that people experience. They leave a job. They have the option to take what they've accumulated in pension. I want your advice. Should they do that?
Well, I'm asked this question often, and I always feel compelled to give an authentic response.
Yes, please.
Which is, I always feel I need to confess that when I left my first job, I had that option before me. And even though I was, practicing as an attorney in pensions, and I was advocating for people to keep their money and port it to another plan, don't take any. When I saw those figures,
run with it.
And I mean, maybe now I look back and that, the figures probably were quite small, would probably appear quite small to me now. Yeah. But then I was like, wow. So yeah, I took half of what was there and spent it. And I will tell you, I could not tell you no. Like, I couldn't tell you the pair of shoes I bought for those. I spent it, it's done, I can't account for it. But I did save 50% of it, and it continued to build up my retirement account. So my advice is, don't do what I did. Please port everything.
Yes.
You never had it before you left the job. It was really nothing to, you weren't counting on it. And so just ignore it as you were ignoring it and just port it to another pension arrangement. That's one of the benefits that we have in our pension legislation, is that you're able to port from your exiting workplace to a retirement scheme or to a new employer's retirement pension arrangement.
Right. That covers everybody.
Yes, that covers everyone. And more and more, you're going to see the locking in of pensions. And we're expecting that when phase 2 comes in, when the Pensions Act is amended, you're going to see some locking in features where it's going to become a lot more difficult for people to take their retirement income as cash.
So it's the dichotomy between the conversation. Yeah, but it's my money, but it's also my future.
Exactly. And so there's a kind of protecting you from yourself.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. So how do I keep abreast of my contributions?
Good question. So for the employer-managed pension plans called superannuation schemes, you have trustees. And trustees are the ones really tasked with managing the pension plan, ensuring persons get their benefits on time, their benefit statements are given, they're accurate, up to date.
Right.
And so your trustees are who are, kind of primarily accountable to you for your pension.
Yes.
And you have access to your trustees. The law requires that. You also have access to your trustees through the typical HR manager. As well, trustees will appoint administrators, and administrators manage things like your benefit statements, the record keeping of the pension plan.
Right.
And so administrators as well are a port of access to understanding what's happening with your pension. The law requires all pension plans to give members benefit statements throughout the year periodically, and so it's incumbent on you to check your benefit statement to ensure that it's accurate.
Right.
And so you do have a responsibility where that is concerned to keep abreast of it, to ensure you know what's happening. And when it comes to retirement schemes now, that's a little different because, of course, you still have a board of trustees, but there's no HR department that you can just knock on the door very easily. And so you would contact your, there's usually some kind of contact officer that you can speak to if you have a question about your pension benefit with your retirement scheme. And many of the retirement scheme providers as well have online portals where you can log in and you can see your benefit statement. You can make a query, raise a complaint if there's any concern.
But I am curious though, the trustee would also help me to understand the pension statement, right?
So the trustees usually would delegate a responsibility to the administrator. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have, Theodore and Co. You have 20 employees and they're all a part of your pension plan.
Right.
You would have an administrator, could be any of the investment administrator providers out there, Barita, Proven, VM, they're, NCB, they're out there. And so oftentimes it's the administrator who's the one who's actually dealing with that data. Okay. And if you have questions, you're usually directed to the administrator.
I see.
Ultimately, though, the trustees cannot divest themselves of these responsibilities. So the investment management and administration is fundamentally and ultimately the responsibility of the trustees, though it's delegated.
Got you. So you're in pensions, and I'm going to ask you about pensions in Jamaica. What does it look like? Are people doing pensions?
So we really do have a retirement security crisis on our hands. I would say coverage has hovered between 9 and 11% for basically since independence.
Out of how much?
Out of 100. I mean, we're talking about 9 to 11% of workers in the private sector are in a pension arrangement. So right now we're at 11%, but we've kind of bounced between a 9 and 11%.
Wow.
So right now we're at 11%. If you include public sector workers who are part of the public sector pension plan, and the latest numbers from the Ministry of Tourism regarding tourism workers who are part of the tourism workers pension plan, that number bounces up to about 18%. Now, we've had this public sector compensation restructuring, which ought to see more public sector workers joining the public sector pension arrangement. Right. Because remember what we're having where a lot of people are in these acting positions, and they were acting in positions for years and never qualifying to be in the public sector pension plan. Albeit they may be entitled to a gratuity, they were never entitled to a pension.
Understood.
So it's yet to be seen how those numbers will shift now that the restructuring program is pretty much wrapping up. Right. But right now, if you include everybody, you're talking about 18%. So it's just unacceptable. Yes. And so we are facing a retirement security crisis where we're going to see more and more Jamaicans entering retirement facing the real prospect of old age poverty.
Wow.
And that becomes a burden on us as citizens because it's a burden, it's a fiscal burden which will get passed on to us to support.
Right.
And so it's something that we need to really attack as a country and find solutions to address the retirement security crisis. The PIAJ is working on a particular initiative which we speak about often, auto-enrollment. I know the regulator, the Financial Services Commission, is looking at the viability of micro-pensions. And then there are a number of other different...
Sorry, you have to define that last one.
Okay, so auto-enrollment, let me back up to auto-enrollment, is a proposal of the PIAJ where an employer doesn't have a pension plan. Remember, we spoke earlier that an employer does not have to put in place a pension plan. Right. Where an employer does not have a pension plan, they would be mandated to automatically enroll their employees in a retirement scheme. So the employer basically takes that first step for you, kind of nudges you. Right now, we have a program where if your employer doesn't have a pension plan, you have to take that step to opt into a retirement scheme. You have to go knocking on the door of Barita, VM, Proven, Scotia. Exactly, you got it, Theo. And so what we're saying is we're proposing that we'll do the nudge for you. The employer has to nudge you into the plan. No, it's not a tax.
Okay.
It's not mandatory. If you find that you're not inclined to be a part of the retirement scheme, you wish not to, you can opt out.
Okay.
The key, though, is that people generally opt out because of a present state of affairs. right now it's just not convenient to save because there's no Jamaican who doesn't like to save. We're savers. People see the benefit in saving.
Okay.
And so the proposal sees what's called auto re-enrollment. So periodically you'll be put back into the retirement scheme. And we want to create as much stickiness as possible to ensure that, maybe 2 years of auto re-enrolling you won't come out on the second or the third time because maybe 2 years from now it's a better time to save. So that's the auto enrollment. And then micro pensions is really attacking a different demographic now. These are your low income workers, your informal workers who get nudges in a different way. So on your phone you might get nudged to make a contribution from your phone credit or maybe from your bank account. You go to the supermarket and you are nudged to top up your bill, round it up, and that rounded up amount goes to your pension. You drive up to the gas station, same thing. You're prompted to round up into your retirement account. Another approach is kind of setting a default savings percentage. So every time I spend, I have determined that 5% of whatever I spend will go into my retirement scheme. So so there are different ways in which you can use technology to really encourage people, and then you don't think about it. It's a little bit, often, right. So rather than monthly or quarterly, you're nudging often and you're saving weekly, daily, small amounts.
We are pretty much out of time, but I feel I have to give you that moment to speak directly to our audience, a whole broad spectrum, young, old, entrepreneurs, employed. What's your final word on pensions?
I would encourage my fellow Jamaicans to take retirement security seriously. It's important to start right away. If you haven't made that first step, make it now and save as much as possible. Keep reflecting, going back, checking to see if now is a time to save more, and save as much as you're able to. It will make all the difference to ensure that you have retirement security and you can live an improved, dignified life in retirement.
All right. This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Attorney at Law and President of the Pensions Industry Association of Jamaica, PIAJ, Sonia Goff. Thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take good care.
Society has a great apathy for politics and politicians. That our youth are turned off of politics, disinterested. They have a great, but it's more than suspicion. They hold a strong view that all politics is corrupt. They hold a view that politics is an exercise in corruption. There is no questioning that the political practitioners have in the past and even now contributed to that perspective. But it is a constant diet of negativity around the political effort that even when it is not so, even when things are changing before your very eyes, even when today is vastly different from the politics of 20 or 30 years ago, even when the very changes that have been advocated to make the system better have been implemented, there still remains a chorus of negative perspectives always being spewed in every area of the society, not recognizing that pulling away from the system and not participating or always diminishing the value of the system will not make your circumstances better. The only way to make your circumstances better is to participate, to hold your political representatives to account. It is participation that does that.
And just like that, we're signing out for today. But not to worry, you can rewatch this offering or other content like this by visiting our website, jis.gov.jm. Do join us again tomorrow on the same station as we bring another informative, educational, and entertaining package of Jamaica Magazine. Thank you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.